There we go.
Okay. So this is a board meeting of the CSS Workforce New York Board, August 27th, 2020. Present for board members, we have AJ Kircher, Bill Caudle, Bruce Boughton, Tim Driscoll, Ernie Hartman, Jack Wheeler, James Griffin, Jamie Johnson, Jeannie Eschbeck, Josh Michael, Judy McKinney-Cherry, Kim Nagel, Mike Mishhook. From staff and guests, we have Daniel Porter, David Preet. Sorry about that. I lost my spot. Keith Guthrie, Melissa Johnson, Phyllis Ballier, Rayanne Widmer Mason, and Sally Rousseau. And we just had Chris Sharkey, also board member, join us. So we have 14 board members with quorum. Jack, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Conflict of interest disclosure. If an item comes up, as always, that an individual has a conflict with, please disclose that and recuse yourself. Also, we'll move on to meeting minutes of June 25th, which had been attached. Any questions, comments? If not, could I get a motion?
Jamie, I'll move them.
Oh, a second.
Motion and second. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Board chair report, board membership. Looks like we still need, Dan, one private sector individual or two?
Just one at the moment.
Okay.
So we really need some help from Chemung County Network, private sector. So business networks would be very, very helpful to have someone from that area.
Dan, this is Jeannie. There's a new HR person coming in for Arnett in September. And I don't think we have any real healthcare folks on the call. Would that be something that might be helpful?
Yes, I would love to have a.
I'll put a feeler out.
Okay, all right. And if you want to have a joint call and to kind of talk about, stuff, let me know. I'd be happy
Sure.
to jump.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, program budget, year 2019 final budget as of June 2020.
Yep. So I presented this at the executive committee meeting, but I want to just circle back to the board. So Jack, when you do exec committee stuff, you don't need to report on this. So this is how we looked closing out the year. So going subcategory, which is the yellow lines on the screen, personnel, we came in under budget, which was expected because a huge chunk of this line item, the salary and fringe line, is the youth, the emerging workforce work experience trainings, because they are technically on our employees as our payroll. So that is why we were down significantly on this line. Going into operating expenditures on this screen, if you look how we closed out, we closed high on rent and utilities. But if you go down to the bottom down here, you'll see this Corning Youth Support area right here is zeroed out. Patty and I, with COVID, were not able to get in and do the measurements on the youth space in a timely manner. So a chunk of these expenditures up here should be transferred down there. Really, it's just an accounting and breakout issue, and we'll resolve it in this year's budget, but that kind of tells you why we're over there. Professional services came in about right. We were significantly over right here in the supply line, and this is an accounting thing. So during the peak of the COVID craziness, where no one could get any PPE or cleaning supplies, we were buying them for the career centers and stockpiling in our office. So if you go to the Corning admin office right now, you would see quite a stock of PPE and supplies. Because they're sitting in the Corning office, they're all technically on our supply line item. What you will see over the course of the coming year as the career centers reopen is, as we transfer them out of that office into those centers, you'll see the expenses disappear from this line, and you'll see them reappear down in this section down here as the expenses incur. So this is a temporary blip because of how we have to track that in our budget. Otherwise, total operating expenditures, if you look in the subcategory, we came in at about 95%. So I'm not really all that unhappy with where we closed there. One-stop expenses with the closure of the centers, we came in significantly under our goal on those in that category there. Down in program expenditures, we were, excuse me, under contracted services, you see it looks like we're 116%. That is an accounting issue as to how the state requires us to report. So we have to report the full obligation and accrual of the operator contract with the workplace. So it looks like we're over, but the reality is the August and part of September and are included in here, and they shouldn't be. So we came in just about right on contracted services. I'm actually pretty pleased how the OJT and customized closed out the year, given the really serious drop off at the end. Participant supports, supportive services mileage all came in under because we didn't get as many people into training as we'd hoped at the end of the year. The top program, we had budgeted 75,000. We were only able to spend about 25,000. We had budgeted for a second AMP program to occur in June, and quite honestly, neither us, I think, nor BOCES were able to even contemplate adding another course there. So the ITA line, actually, Ernie's team made up a little bit of the difference because we didn't spend that money, we were able to over budget shoot on the ITA line. So all in all, if you look at this category, and I can't see because they got this little, there we go. We came in about 90%, which is good. So big numbers that we look at are right down here. So as you know, or most of you know, and there's a couple of you new and don't know, the New York State Department of Labor requires that we spend 80% of our new monies each year and can only carry 20 into the following year. So one of the things that we're always looking at and why we put percentages down here on the bottom is we're looking at how we closed out the year to see if this number is at 80% or not. If you look at closing out last year, it looks like in total, if you look at big picture of WIOA funds, we spent, using DOL's definition, we spent 81% of our money, so we hit our target. The challenge becomes is that Department of Labor doesn't just look at 80% overall, they look at 80% of each of the substreams. So admin, we hit our 80%. Adult, we went well over 80%. Dislocated worker, we went a little over 80%. But the outlier here is our youth stream for our emerging workforce program. They came significantly underspent, So while in total we had 80%, there was a very real risk that we were going to give some of our youth money back to the state this year. The state did come out with and allowed for areas to apply to waive the 80% expenditure required because of the COVID. So we did apply and we were able to salvage, and we are not going to be giving any of our youth dollars back. But that's part of the July conversation and more. So just looking at how we closed out last year's budget, I'd be happy to field questions if there are. Otherwise, it would be good to have a motion to accept these expenditures to close out the year.
I move we accept these expenditures.
Bill Connell, second.
Motion second. Any questions? I think personally, Dan, you and your team did an excellent job managing the budget, with COVID and everything else in consideration. So, and certainly happy for the flexibility that the state has granted. So all good on my end. Any questions from anybody? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. July 2020 budget, Dan.
All right, so this is July. This is our first months of activity on the new PY20 budget year. There's really not a lot you're going to really pull out of this because it's so early in the year. Our PY approved budget is here. This is really where probably the most interesting part is going to occur in the coming months. So as I noted with you earlier in the other budget, we did not have to give back our youth dollars. So the budget I built here for the approved assumed that the state would enforce its recapture fund on those emerging workforce dollars. So executive committee at their next committee will have a budget together and start looking at, and we'll be proposing, and you'll see the approved budget being recommended to be changed to account for the additional WIOA youth expenditures, and you'll see them spread throughout the budget. But in terms of looking at this 1 month's activity, it's, you know, you can see where we've spent on the personnel line. We're about 8% expended there. Operating expenditures, these look like they're a little bit high here in this line, but remember, because we are required under obligation, so this 18.4 appears to be spent. That's the remainder of our lease on our space. So don't panic on that. We're not that far overspent. Dues and membership looks a little high. We've renewed our membership in our state association, NIATEP. So this is a one-time, so that becomes effectively a timing issue. The GMS service, same thing. We have to pay one-time annual fees to use our accounting software package. So that becomes a matter of timing as well. The career centers are noticeably underspent because effectively, other than the staff in them and some customer appointments, there's not a lot going on in them at the moment. But you do see lease obligations here. So it looks like we're spending a lot of money. It's really an obligation on those. Under program expenditures, again, you see the remainder of the contracts being added in there. We've not actually spent those money yet. Training and OJTs, when we do the budget or the business services budget, you'll see we're doing well on this line item in terms of starting out this year. And ITAs, this is only through the end of July, and there was some additional meetings. Ernie will report out a little bit later on that. But the ITA group, this is peak ITA training season. So they have come out really strong on training. So I'm very pleased with that. All in all, it appears that we're about 20% through the year, but it's really a misnomer because of the way the obligations are handled in reporting to the state. So I can certainly field questions on this, but there's not a lot of trending yet to see.
Any questions for Dan? If not, could I get a motion to accept, please?
Motion to accept, Jim Griffin.
Second, Ernie.
Motion and second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Executive committee report. The minutes from August were attached. Are there any questions? Nothing substantial. We talked about a lot of the different trainings. We'll talk further later on about some of those and some of the specific providers that were listed, but you can see all our activity on that. Are there any questions?
The only thing I would say, Jack, is just to highlight real quick that we did have two businesses, the Corning IDM plant. We had a lot of conversation about how much money we could support with the pretty substantial grant they asked for, as well as ID booth as well. So there, in the case of the IDM plant, we've agreed, and actually IDM has concurred and willing to accept up to $10,000 for their training, and the looks like for the ID booth, they're going to be hitting about a $35,000 expenditure. I just think those two are biggies worth mentioning or highlighting.
Yeah, certainly, good point. Like Dan said, there was a lot of discussion about capping, about how large of an expense per employer, but obviously we have the training dollars want to use them in good shape and for good purposes. They seem like good purposes, but we did have conversations about some sort of cap so it doesn't get unnecessarily out of control. But again, executive committee and the board controls all that. Dan and staff bring it to us. So at least from my view, I think everything's in pretty good shape. So any questions on this? Okay, if not, can I get a motion to accept, please?
I'll motion,
Mo-
okay.
I heard a motion. Was there a second? Did you get that?
I motioned, it was AJ.
Okay,
Judy seconds.
okay, thank you. Motion is second, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Operations and oversight minutes.
Yep. So-
Anything of note from the group?
Yes. So, yep, this is Judy. You know, we met on the 5th. Just a couple items just to highlight. One is, and probably the most important part is that the career centers are all open and they are all practicing the safety protocols, but they're open taking appointments. So I think that that's an important feature. I just wanted to point that out, and that Dan and his team are doing sort of a continuous improvement. They're meeting regularly to sort of do a review of how that's working. I'm not going to go through the individual minutes because everyone has those, but what I would like to do is, even though it's a year out, the Operations and Oversight Committee would like to take the lead, or will be taking the lead, on developing the RFP. And what we want to do is make sure that we have the board engaged, because it's so vitally important. We want to make sure that the board's engaged. And so rather than, I guess I'm asking if there's others that are interested in being on the RFP committee, just to let me know. And then if you think that your organization may be bidding on this RFP, putting a proposal in, we would just ask that you'll not be able to be part of that, of the process. But some of the newer members on the board, it would be great to have some new eyes looking at the RFP, looking at the process, if there's other techniques we should be using, other things we should be incorporating. This is your opportunity to really sort of make a difference going forward. So just let us know. Again, it's a year out, but we probably need to begin working on this in probably in the next few months. We'll start to gen it up. And that's all, Mr. Chairman. If there's any questions.
Thanks very much, Judy. That sounds great. Thanks for flagging that, and certainly contact Judy or Dan if you're interested in doing that. Any questions for Judy or Dan or the crew? Okay, if not, need a motion to accept those, right, Dan? Can I get a motion?
Yep,
Bill call
accept.
Bill call a motion.
Jamie, I'll second it.
Motion and second. Any questions? Thanks very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Nothing from the Personnel Committee. The other task forces. Anything from Ernie on ITA of note? Or Dan?
Yep, I think Ernie might be muted, maybe.
No, I'm on now.
Oh, there he is. Yep, there.
Yeah, the staff put together a series of charts here that we go over real quick. The one in the upper left hand shows in July we were probably listening to crickets for applicants, but I think that could be explained by we're pretty much limited to training that is online based. And I think by August, we were seeing more and more services being provided for online training. That's why we saw the big jump. Also, people might have realized that that extra $600 was going to go away at the end of August, so they thought they probably ought to start looking for a career. And we did. I think we had 7 applicants yesterday, so it's coming in hot and heavy. The training program breakdown, and the next slide shows where most of the trainings are going through. The training provider list shows who's doing most of the training, with Corning Community College being the majority, and GST BOCES coming right up behind them. Tuition and supportive services, as you can see, August was a big month, and that graph doesn't even count what we did yesterday. In fact, as of August 14th, we've already done approximately 20,000 in tuition and 5,600 in supportive services. And if you want to throw in yesterday's, there's another up to $15,000, excuse me, in expenditure, just for yesterday. It was really quite a session we had. And in the funding category, what's kind of odd is historically adult has been the majority of the funding, but with COVID and so many dislocated workers, that starting to turn the other way. Other than that, that's about it. If Dan keeps throwing money at us, we're going to spend it.
That's a good thing. No, great job. It's good to see that get cranking, and again, means we're getting somewhat back to normal, so that's good. Any questions for Ernie or the crew? All righty. Don't need a motion for this, right, Dan?
No, it's just a report out for the board.
Okay. Thank you. I-86, many of us serve on the I-86 committee.
Jamie,
A lot of discussion still going on, but a lot of what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to, never mind. All right.
Oh, yeah, no problem. A lot of the it's been, I won't say dormant, but obviously with COVID and all of us responding in our different fashions, not a lot of time to focus on I-86 initiatives, but it still is going. Jamie, is there anything that you want to mention with this?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that, Jack, is that Chris Sharkey and I did meet with Susan Payne at Three Rivers Development to talk about the direction of the workforce initiative for I-86, and we all agreed that the data that we were working under was old data, knowing that we've all been impacted by COVID. So as we tried to assess, the direction, we were also approached by Southern Tier Central, who was receiving and has received a fairly significant EDA assistance grant to help with COVID disaster recovery. And one of the things that Southern Tier Central is doing with that money is actually, looking to they have developed an RFP, and they'll be hiring, a group to come in and do an economic development disaster recovery strategy. And as part of that, we had requested that they include workforce development as part of that assessment, to give us updated data. And a series of recommendations and questions were circulated amongst the I-86 Workforce Committee, and then given to Southern Tier Central to include in that RFP, and that has been done. So, we are going to be working with STC to make sure that the data we're working off of, which was originally included in the first I-86 workforce strategy, is really new data and updated data, considering the times that we are living in now. So while there hasn't been any real activity as far as programs and resources out there on the street as far from the I-86 group, we are working to try to assess the current situation and figure out how we need to move forward from here.
That's great. Thank you very much. Chris, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just tag on that, we understand that, in this post, current pandemic world, workforce is still a really high priority. It just looks different than it did. So we are doing both collecting that data that Jamie referenced. But Susan, Jamie, and I are also meeting on some other ideas that would be sort of a tide that lifts all boats. So more to come on that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yep, we'll all obviously stay in touch for all of that. So thank you. Moving on to the operator report, David's on. Is anything that Dave would like to share?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to just, excuse me, give you everybody an update on some of the center activities since PY so far for PY20, which of course started July 1st. These numbers are through August 21st, which was last Friday. So some of the August numbers may have increased a little bit over the past few days. As you can see, and I'm going to be, totally transparent here. The customer workshop attendance has been low compared to the numbers offered. We're actually averaging 1 or less than 1. But I can assure you that the workplace staff and the CSS workforce staff are working diligently to come up with ways in which we can increase attendance at the upcoming workshop. So, and if anybody has any suggestions or ideas on possibly how to do that, please feel free to share those with us. As you can see in August, the number of OS registrations is lower than July, but again, those numbers were only through the 21st. The emerging workforce referrals, we had 8 in July, not as fruitful in August, but we have had 9 referrals since PY20 to the emerging workforce program. We did submit 8 ITAs this month, so they were 8 were in that group that Ernie had talked about. The career services, we've provided significantly more in August than in July. Please keep in mind that multiple services are provided to individuals. So as you can see at the bottom, under the next to the asterisk, most of the unique individuals receive multiple services. But we did increase the number of unique individuals served also in August. Many of those were through a customized training. Sorry about that. We're through a customized training that we are currently working on registering people for ID booth. There was, I believe, 61 total that were going to participate in that training. Not all of them were registered at the time I did this report, but I think they're all registered now and ready to go. So that, again, that number will also increase. If you go to the workshops by month, you can just kind of get a feel for where we're at since May when we started doing the virtual workshops. Again, we do want to increase the attendance, but I also want to let you know that each month we are increasing the number of workshops. I believe for September there's 26, if I'm not mistaken, total that are scheduled, and the schedule actually is also was attached to the invite to the meeting, so you can have access to when those workshops are going to take place, what the topics are, and who's presenting those. Let's see, the average attendance per workshop, if you look through, again, there's some that have not been as successful as others. The budgeting one seems to right now be the most popular, along with the understanding conflict. That's one that, especially you know, with everything going on now, the conflict one is one that's been pretty well attended the last couple of sessions that we've had. And then the workshops by provider, as you can see, the PTE Esprit program has produced, or I should say facilitated the most workshops to date, followed by the workplace and then the emerging workforce. And when I say facilitated, that those are the staff that work for those programs that are facilitating those particular workshops. The feedback from these surveys are reviewed on a regular basis by staff and by the team supervisors, myself included. Adjustments and edits are made as needed. The evaluations can be are available upon request. So if anybody wants to see any of the evaluations or feedback from any of the surveys, you know, let myself or Keith or Jessica Brown know, and we would, or Phyllis, and we'd be happy to send those results to you.
So one of the things Dave mentioned on that is we're looking for ways to increase it. Some of you I've shared in other conversations, but I just kind of want to let the board know where we're at. In a normal scenario, the OSOS system, which is the Department of Labor's data system, would allow us certain capabilities. So we could call up cohorts of people who were, you know, enrolled or registered, you know, by day or week or month or whatever, and we could slice and dice it and get lists of people, and we could be actively engaging and trying to reach out to those individuals. Shortly before COVID, the system sort of went down. So the management report functionality, the state started an overhaul, and then the COVID took them completely offline. And so we lost all management report functionality. So we cannot call up lists of people who are registered or number of people on UI. There, for a brief time, we were able to do some workaround activities using some kind of backdoor ways. Rayanne and I were playing with it. But then ultimately the system just, I'm just going to say it broke down. I'm not sure whether someone took that offline, that kind of backdoor functionality offline or what, but it ceased to operate. So we have for a number of months now we've been really running in the dark. We don't know how many people each week are claiming UI. We don't know who they are. And so as a career center and trying to outreach and engage folks, we really struggled with just knowing what we're up against. The Department of Labor keeps that data very, very tight to chest. Recently, they've released some numbers, and I will begin kind of reporting out on that. I've got some stuff, but it still is not a workable. It's just a number. So I don't have the contact information capability. I don't have the sorting and sifting. And so our outreach, in short, has been really hampered. So in addition to the problem with, you know, of the extra, you know, $600, you know, maybe acting as a bit of a headwind, we didn't even know who these folks were. So we would not been able to effectively reach out and try and recruit them. So we're slowly working, and we've got some other approaches we're going to try. And Rayanne and I have been playing with the OSOS system, and Phyllis and Dave, and I think we've got some ways that we can begin getting small groups of people out of the system. It won't be efficient, and that will limit how many people we can actually reach out to. But at least it's small groups, and we can begin that process. So we are going to begin putting together a strategy and to outreach, and then we are really hoping that at some point the Department of Labor team will kind of move away from all UI all the time and allow certain people back in to start getting the system and the gears turning again, specifically on the data side, because all the workforce, we have regular workforce board director meetings, and all the workforce board directors, you know, have kind of shared the same. It's really hard to help people get jobs when we don't even know who they are and how to reach out to them. So that's just kind of what's been going on, and we are moving ahead on that, and there'll be some additional data tracking and some numbers and charts as in the coming meetings as we report out. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up your time, Dave, but I wanted to kind of share some of that context as well.
Appreciate that, Dan. Yeah, that's, yeah. OSIS has been definitely challenging to pull reporting data from because of the lack of, management function there. So, and as you can see, this is the virtual workshop calendar. Again, please feel free to distribute this and invite people that may be interested, whether it's your own staff, yourself, any potential customers or clients that you think would be good candidates for this. Oh, and I also want to mention that today at 10:30 is our first staff training, mandatory staff training. It will be for all of those individuals who work in the Career Center, from the workplace, CSS Workforce, and any partner agencies that have staff working in the Career Centers. The topic is diversity and inclusion. Good timing on that one with everything going on. And it will be instructed by Ashley Van Diver from the workplace. That takes place here on Teams from 10:30 to 11:30. Most of the people who were invited did RSVP. DOL, I know, is wasn't able to commit all their staff because of the large volume of work that they have. So I'm going to record the session and make that available to those who can attend it live this morning. That's all I got. I don't know if there's any questions, comments.
Any questions for Dave? Really thorough report and explanation. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan, too.
One last time, any questions? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Dave. Director's report, Dan, your show.
All right, so first thing on director's report, I have domain occupation list update. Please consider that a typo. We were working on something, but we think we have it covered elsewhere. So this first item here, please, at least for the time being, unless we change our minds, kind of strike that out. We did get a very, as I said, this is prime time for training. Corning Community College did submit a number of ETPL updates. This eligible training provider list. So as a reminder to folks, when we train individuals, job seekers, there are two things. There's demand occupations that we're training in because we're targeting to where there are jobs. And then we have a requirement under the legislation to vet training providers for quality. So ETPL is kind of the second leg of that. Corning Community College has gone through and asked to update in all of these program areas here their tuition and supply costs. So they're all uniform across the board and they all match the SUNY increases. So I didn't get into numbers or anything like that, but they've been approved. These courses have been approved in the past. Really, the only changes at this point are on to reflect the new SUNY tuition and book costs of that nature. So I would ask that we approve the increases. Not that we're approving the increases or have any authority that way, but really approve the new costs so that people can still use these courses in training. I will say for the programs, they still do fall under our level 1, 2, 3 ITA caps in the respective categories. So I'm comfortable even with these increases that it's still a good value and we're going to be able to support them moving forward. The other request that we have is, I'm sorry, Jack, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
The other thing is that Corning Community College, in order to facilitate Ernie's ITA committees, if there are timeliness factors, the executive committee has empowered me to do interim approvals. So during the time to kind of facilitate and make sure we were able to support customers stepping into trainings, I did provide the interim approval for the RN associate degree program at Corning Community College, as well as the mechanical technologies and the certified professional coding. And I would ask that the board consider making those reviews permanent as well. Costs are all in line with our ITA caps. They all lead directly into demand occupations. CCC is a trusted and well-known training provider on that regard, so I felt comfortable doing the initial interim approval. So bottom line, it would be great if we either had one or two, whichever, motions to approve the updates to CCC's programming, as well as make the approvals, the interim approvals that the director did, permanent.
Dan, this is Jeannie, and obviously I have a conflict of interest, so I'm going to step away from that vote.
Yep.
Bill Connell and I would
Okay.
make the motion to accept and approve those.
Judy Cherry, second.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to take them both as one. Any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried with one abstention. Thank you. All right, Dan, business services report.
So business services, this is where we kind of report out what we're doing on the OJT and the ITA category. So this is, excuse me, July and part of August. We have written 6 OJT contracts with 3 or 4 different employers from across the area. We are kind of going to Ernie's point earlier. We are now seeing more dislocated workers be able to be identified in the system. On the one hand, I will tell you that's very disappointing because that means folks have been laid off. On the other hand, for us, the dislocated worker monies have been very challenging to spend these past few years. And so please don't read my happiness that I'm funding these with dislocated workers as somehow I'm glad people are losing their jobs. But we were able to do 6. We have more in the works on that front. On customized trainings, we've written with 4 different companies here as well. There is another one that will be coming in the very near future from ID Booth as well. That will be substantial, but you can see the dollar amounts and the companies that we are supporting. So the total value currently is about $26,000. I've given the bin team, given our budget realities, I've given them the target of between $10,000 up to $15,000 per month as kind of their average goal to write for these. So almost 2 months, we're almost 30,000. So they are, and we still got a $35,000 one that needs to be mixed in here as well. So they are certainly hitting their budgetary goals. Maybe even a touch over at this point, but that's okay because normally December and January businesses kind of slow down on the training. So we kind of ramp up right now to kind of smooth out that time. But we do have quite a bit of money still in our customized and OJT budget, and we are budgeting and pushing to keep serving in this field. The trend, I would say, is we're getting a lot of companies that want to cross-train employees on the ITA. So where before they maybe had 4 people and they were all specialized in various categories, we're seeing a lot of companies who maybe now only have 2 or 3, but instead of hiring them as specialists, they're cross-training them. So they're doing multiple pieces of different jobs. That's what we're seeing in terms of employer need for training on the customized front. Just a little value added FYI of kind of the direction on that. Any questions? Comments?
Thank you, Dan. And any questions for Dan or staff? If not, could I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved. This is Judy.
Second, this is Margaret.
Okay, motion and second. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then one procurement, Dan.
Yep. So I have to change my screen here. So you're going to see me kind of flip and flop out a little bit. So as we look to reopen the centers, there is the potential that we would need to go in and disinfect our career centers if we were exposed to a case. I'm trying to find, where did it go? Where did it go? I'm sorry. Dang it. All right, I've got to find out what I'm sorry. I can't remember what screen it's on here. So there it is. So it's on that one. So I did put together an initial procurement, which would be which had regular boy. No, that's not it. Anyways, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna not try and share that because I'm obviously struggling with that technology. So we had put together and requested and done a procurement for regularly scheduled misting services in our career centers. I had presented those initial bids to the executive committee. And rightly so, it was quite expensive to have a regular service come in and do that. However, the exec felt that we still should have a contract for if we have an incident and we do need to come in and do a misting of a particular center, have the ability to have a group on contract that can come in and do that for us. So we did go back out to bid on that, and we specifically asked, and we had 2 bidders for the work. We did it by the square footage in each of our respective locations. So the 2 bidders that we were able to get replies from were SKJ Facilities Management. And for the admin office, if they needed to come in, it would be $100 per. For Bath, $120. For Elmira, $150. Cornell, $120. And Montour Falls, $100. So if you look and add them all up, just for comparison purposes, $590. The other one was Spartan Sanitizing Services. In the admin office, they were looking at $190.08. Bath, $88.48. Elmira, $492.29. Hornell, $42.06. And Montour Falls, $151.20. If you add them all up just for simple comparison purposes, theirs is $964. So they were noticeably higher than the SKJ bidders, and it was across the board. It wasn't like they were, cheaper in one area geographically speaking and higher in another, making up for it. It was across the board. It was higher service costs. So the staff recommendation would be to engage SKJ Facilities Management on an on-call as needed basis for the sanitation, disinfecting, spray services for our facilities if we needed it. The procurement would last for a year with 2 additional 1-year extensions possible. And if folks concur with that, then I would entertain a motion. If there's no need and we don't even want to really have this on hand, then we can certainly notify the bidders that we won't be moving forward with it.
I think it's a good idea to have on the books to be able to do an emergency.
Do we need a motion of the board to approve something like this, which is really an executive decision regarding the expenditure isn't that high. I know we have a limit as to what you can do without having a board. I mean, I'm all fine with making the motion, but I just wonder why we do this.
Yeah. So here's the challenge. If we only do it one time at a center or 2 centers, then I certainly don't need board approval on it, and we don't need to procure anything like that. But God forbid we have multiple centers. The state's going to look at our total expenditures on this over the course of a program year. If our total expenditures on this service over a program year exceed that $1,000, then I'm going to need board approvals and procurements and all those fun things. That's why we're doing this. It's really, in a perfect world, you're absolutely correct. We wouldn't need this for one-offs here and there. But God forbid we get things. This gives us kind of the preemptive cover to avoid disallowed costs down the road or question costs by the photo.
Motion to approve.
I second the motion.
Okay. Motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right. Thank you. Other than the next meetings, which are listed, on your agenda. Are there any announcements, anything anyone wants to bring up, anything we missed?
The only thing I would reinforce is kind of something Judy mentioned earlier. So the RFP process is really important. And I know for some of our newer board members, it may feel a little abstract or what are we talking about sort of things. But the RFP process really is where we get where the rubber is going to hit the road for the majority of our customers. So the operator and the RFP operator contract really is running these centers. So it's the lead person across all of our career centers, all 4 of them in 3 counties. It's the primary vehicle for the workshops, the trainings, the ITA sources, the referral to the youth programs. That really is an integral, and I don't think you can understate the importance of that RFP. It's big, and we are intentionally starting this a little bit early to kind of ferret out and really think through what's been going on in the centers, and more importantly, what we want the centers to look like moving forward. COVID really threw a wrench in some stuff, and we've kind of virtualized and digitalized, and so now we want to have some real conversations, you know, given this, the magnitude of this shift, what does our RFP for our operator really need to look like moving forward? And do we need all the physical hours, or do we need more physical hours? Do we need more career centers? Do we need less career centers? It's really a big undertaking. And I don't want folks to underestimate and think this, well, it's just another RFP for the operator, because I think this is an opportunity for us to really think about where our job seeking customers go, or how they experience our services. So, and I'm sorry to get on my soapbox and maybe step on Judy's toes a little bit, but I want to reinforce that if you want to be part of that conversation and really think through that, I would encourage you to reach out to me or Judy and ask to be part of it.
Yeah, great point. Please do that. You know, as many folks as we could have really taking a look. I think that's a good thing. So very much appreciate that. Any questions, any other actions?
Jack, this is Jeannie Ashback. I would just like to echo what Dan and Judy have said about the RFP process. And I would also, especially for those newer members that are on our board, really have the businesses think about what the businesses want from our career centers. Because in addition to serving individuals, it really should be serving businesses. And they are. I mean, I don't mean to indicate that they're not, but I think, you know, before COVID, you know, our businesses were scrambling to find people. And so all of you businesses have a real vested interest, whether you're a nonprofit or a profit-making business, have a real vested interest in making sure that this career center system works well. So that's my soapbox. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's all great points, and I would agree. You know, especially for some of the new members. Yeah, if you want to really learn very quickly what the centers do and how important it is. I mean, you all know it obviously, but it is a learning opportunity as well. So definitely reach out. Any other announcements? All right. If not, hope everyone's doing well. Good to see everyone virtually. And if I could get a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Judy.
AJ, second.
Okay. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.